Namaskaram. Very warm welcome on behalf of Indian Fine Arts Academy of San Diego. This is our 9th annual Music and Dance Festival. We have a grand celebration ahead for the next 7 days. Our pre-festival started with a wonderful dinner sponsored by Dr. Lal and Devi Tumala. Please give them a round of applause. If you haven't had that dinner, it's still available as well after the speech. As you know, that we are celebrating the centenary of Bharat Ratna M.S. Subbulakshmi this year. And she needs no introduction to us, both as a music lover, but also as an Indian, that she's very well known in her music, philanthropy, and others as well, which we are going to hear very shortly about her. And second, of course, is we are also celebrating 96th birthday of our beloved Guruji, Pandit Ravi Shankar. Guruji lived in this town, and of course, also was a constant supporter, and of course, which is also very important. In fact, several of the programs, and to some extent, even the festival became as a festival because of him as well, his vision. In addition, we also celebrate the 125th anniversary of Pavanasam Sivan, Ariyakodi Ramanangar, as well as the 150th birth anniversary of Mysore Vasudevacharya. And so there are lots of celebrations ahead, wonderful music and dance programs ahead. We brought some very exclusive programs from coastal Karnataka, Yakshagana program. So we brought a fantastic panelist as well. And leading the panel is Dr. Pappu Venugopal Rao. He needs absolutely no introduction. Author, researcher, scholar, and very importantly, the Secretary of the Music Academy of Chennai. So he's here. Along with him, joining him on the panel is Dr. Gauri Ramanarayanan, grandniece of M.S. Subbulakshmi, and also who has accompanied her about 20 plus years, and probably she holds a record. I just mentioned to her the maximum number of YouTube appearances or videos of her in the YouTube as well. And of course, you're going to see the YouTube first, then see her as well. Then, of course, we are also very graciously accepted to come, even though it was my last-minute call. That is a lovely, wonderful singer, our favorite, none other than Gayatri Venkatraghavan. She had lots of better offers to go, including to visit the Grand Canyon. And I did tell her, convince her that it's a very hot, humid, dusty, and of course smells bad. So I brought her here all the way. She just landed around 1 o'clock here. So I'm thankful for her being here as well. But most importantly, I also want to thank each and every one of you for making this event possible. Although we may be smaller in numbers, I was telling Pappu sir earlier, we are like a vitamin tablet. All you need is a small number, but that will invigorate us in terms of what is going to happen for the next 7 days. And that's going to be the case as well. I have attended a number of sessions at the Music Academy for the last many years, every time I've been there. And that's one of the probably well-attended programs. There isn't a single seat you can find inside. And most of the time, you have to end up watching from outside as well. So I was talking to him. We have been talking to him a couple of years for him to come. And finally, he was able to make time to visit with us. And I'm so glad that he's here as well. Before we start with the video, before we start with the panel discussion, let me ask the folks to start with the video shortly. In addition, we also want to mention those of you who have become the subscription, you will be able to get into the events, all the events, except the last 2 events, which is the Aruna Sairam's event as well as the Team Krishna's event. Please don't miss it. They are in the superb form. Wonderfully, they planned out the entire concerts in that regard. So don't want to miss it. So you can become a subscription plus patron today. That's going to save you about 40%. And importantly, that will get you the best seats as well. So Srinivasan Prabha, where is he? Okay, he's outside. So please don't miss it. Please make sure that you become subscription plus patron for those of you who have become subscription. If you haven't become one, I urge you, I don't have to tell you, you will become one right after watching this event. So let's start with our video short video of MS Subbulakshmi. Even though it's been taken from NDTV, which I want to thank them for allowing us to do this, but also it's a fairly old one, so certainly that some of them actually are going to be repeated as well. So let's start with the NDTV video.
He was born in 1890, September 26th. He was then not situated in Tamil Nadu. He was actually a student of Sanskrit in Thiruvananthapuram. And Neelakanta Sivan, one Sivan influences another Sivan, is Neelakanta Sivan influences Papanasana Sivan. I will ask Gauri later on, because Dr. Gauri Ramanarayan grew up as a child in Kalakshetra, with seeing a lot of people like Budulur Krishnamurti Shastrigal, Tiger Varadacharya, Papanasana Sivan, Mysore Vasudevacharya, all of them. And she has the unique personality of knowing these great stalwarts and being, seeing them compose music and seeing them doing things. I will ask her after I speak about, before we go to MS Subbulakshmi, I will ask her to talk about Mysore Vasudevacharya particularly and Papanasana Sivan. Papanasana Sivan, he was singing in Kapaleshwara temple one day. And Mr. Menon of Kalakshetra and Rukmani Atta's father, they happened to hear him sing. They said, "Yaro orthar vandu romba nalla bhaktiyoda paadranga." So that is how, he came to Kalakshetra. He was asked to teach. He said, "I don't know how to teach." They said, "You don't need to teach, you just be here and we'll see what we can do with you." Similarly, when Vasan asked him, Gemini Vasan asked him to write lyrics for movies, he said, "I don't know how to write lyrics for movies." He said, "You write lyrics and we will use it for movies." So that is how it happens. He composed about 2,000 songs, composed music to films, composed music to Kalakshetra dance dramas. And there are several ragas in which he composed 20, 30, 10, 11 different kinds of songs, and taught and composed music to several students. Then we come to 125 Araikudi Ramanuja Iyengar and GNB R. Venkatraman when he was president. All of them spoke very highly of Araikudi's contribution. And Gauri was just telling me a little joke. He used to tell everybody, organizers particularly, MS Ammaku evlo kodukrala adoda oru 100 rupee extra kodutha porum. So that's Araikudi. And Araikudi, of course, apart from being credited with giving the format, the concert format that we often talk about, that he has given it to Carnatic music, which people are not following anymore in many cases. But then comes his contribution and compositions of particularly Tirupavai and other compositions. Then we get to Mysore Vasudevacharya, another very highly gigantic personality as a composer. The Sangeeta Ratnakara says, just Vaggayakara does not necessarily mean who composes the lyric and the music to it. Vacham Gayanche Kurite Yasa Vaggayakarakah. That's a very narrow definition actually. A Vaggayakara has to have many, many qualifications. Chanda Prabheda Bheditvam, Alankareshu Kauchalam, Desha Stitisu Chaturi, Ashesha Bhasha Vijnanam. So many, about 22 qualifications are given by Sangeeta Ratnakara. And in post-Trinity composers, Mysore Vasudevacharya has a very significant place, because to the extent that if we ask people who composed Broche or Avarra, there are people who will say Tyagaraja composed it. That is the effect and influence of his compositions. And he has, his marvelous contribution is, apart from just composing these compositions, about 200 of them, the most significant composition, I would believe, is that his contribution to composing music to the Ramayana, most part of Ramayana, I would say most part of the Ramayana, because he left halfway through, which was completed by Raja Ram later on. And the kind of music he has composed, and the ragas he has chosen to depict certain scenes, is only possible by a person who has knowledge of both dance and music. A music composer can be a music composer. Composing music or singing for dance is a very difficult task, because you have to sing one line 20 times. And it's not narrow also, so that is the difficulty. So you find a very significant contribution by Mysore Vasudevacharya. Then if we come to, I will just briefly talk about M.S. Subbulakshmi, because I would rather ask Gauri to, because she has 17 years, she has accompanied her, and closely knows both Sadashivam and Subbulakshmi, because most of us have a very wrong notion about Sadashivam. That Sadashivam was a tyrant. He was, that may be true. But what is more important is, if there is no Sadashivam, there is no M.S. Subbulakshmi today. Because he has taken care from different angles. Even a photographer taking a photograph of M.S. Subbulakshmi is told how to take photograph without the mic in front of her. There are so many intricate, minute details that Sadashivam took care of in her life. And of course, you know that she was born in a Devadasi tradition. And, as a child, what is important is how the qualities you imbibe in childhood will live through you until the end of your life. She was playing with tambura in childhood, I understand. And because of that, you will find her adherence to Shruti absolute in all her life. And there were efforts by her mother to bring her back to Devadasi tradition. One night, she took a train, left all jewelry at home. Without telling her mother, she took a train and came to Chennai. That is turning point in her life. See, it's not an easy life that M.S. Subbulakshmi had. Her music reflects a lot of things. And her personality as popularity has grown enormously after she has started working in films. The Seva Sadan, in which, the Seva Sadan film and the other film, the Savitri, then the Shakuntala, and other films have made her, Meera particularly, made her a very gigantic figure. And it to the extent that in 1939, when Music Academy was, her performance at Music Academy, there was police bandobast for the Music Academy. To that extent, that people wanted to see her. And ultimately that police became so much more that the concert was cancelled that day. To that extent, she was a very big personality. And to the extent that Sarojini Naidu herself says, I would gladly give my Nightingale of India title to M.S. Subbulakshmi. She has wonderful personality, very different dimensions of her personality. And probably one born in Madurai, I will ask Gauri later on to talk about those things, how flawlessly she pronounced Sanskrit words or Telugu words. And it's not easy because in Venkateswara Suprabhatam we get long compounds. Kamalaku chetuchu kakunkumato niyataru nitatulani ilatano. You cannot pronounce it unless you have the knowledge of where to stop, where to take breath, and where to not to stop. And also the Annamacharya compositions like Katigatita Mekhala, Kachita Manigantika, Patalanadena, Vibhrajamanam, Kutila Padagatita Sankula Sinjitenatam, Chatala Natana, Samujvala Vilasam, Bhavayami Gopala Balam is such a complicated compound. She never, you hear Bhavayami from 100 other people singing almost like M.S. Subbulakshmi, but not M.S. Subbulakshmi herself. So with those words, I'll go to the panelists. And first I go to Gauri, then it's going to be very informal. There is no rigid, like Music Academy. We will not want to be rigid. I would request Gauri first to talk about Papanasam from there. I'll come from there now. First about Papanasam Sivan and how do you understand Papanasam Siva's music, his contribution to Kalakshetra, and then talk about Mysore Vasudeva.
Namaskaram. It's such a pleasure to be here among friends who recognize me now and whom I recognize and whose children also I recognize. So it's really like coming home in a Porandathuk Varadan Solva. It's something like that, coming home. And thank you for the opportunity, asking me to talk about a subject that is so close to my heart, and I don't mean M.S. Subbulakshmi alone. All the great musicians of Carnatic music, all the great musicians of India, and to be here where there is a photograph of Panditji, whom all of us absolutely adore. So it is a privilege. Thank you. I don't know if I'm going to talk in a scholarly way about Papanasam Sivan, but I would like to just share some memories. Since it's a very intimate and a kind of a very warm personal rapport is possible to establish here. And I'd like to say that as a child, I grew up in Kalakshetra. My mother was, both of us were learning dance and music at the same time in Kalakshetra. And I don't remember Papanasam Sivan at all. This was before my time. But I know from my seniors and from my teachers how, as Papu sir said, one day Rukmini Devi and her brother, Rukmini Devi's lieutenant, so to speak, Shankara Menon, who was the joint director of Kalakshetra later, and he was everything to Rukmini Devi. He and Rukmini Devi's brother, Yagneshwara Shastri, had gone to Kapaleshwara temple, saw this man, some small, thin, totally unimpressive looking man, making the most impressive music. And so they came back and told Rukmini Devi, and of course the story was that she went to his house and invited him to come and stay in Kalakshetra, which he was very happy to do, because it seems the moment he walked into the Kalakshetra campus full of trees and little cottages in which you had classes, they were really huts, thatched cottages those times. He just said, "This is like a tapovanam. I think I can be very happy here." And he had tremendous admiration for Rukmini Devi, because he thought that she was a true Kala Rasika, more than an artist herself, because she was able to really appreciate classical music, the classical arts, in a way that I think warmed his heart. Because at that time, remember, though music was greatly appreciated, you did not have the kind of respect given to Vidwans which is given today. I think some of the seniors, Papu sir may know that. This kind of respect was not given to them. They stood in, they took the bus. I'm talking about very eminent people, and were not considered to be, socially very in the level of industrialists and lawyers and judges and advocates who were their patrons. So, so the way he was treated, the kind of respect he was given in Kalakshetra, that I think moved him very much. The first job he had was to teach music in Besant School, Besant Theosophical High School, where I studied, but this is more from my time. I believe Shivan sir would be sitting under a tree to teach all the students. They would all come and sit there, and he'd close his eyes and start singing. And when he opened his eyes, not a single student was there, only stray dogs. They would all run away. He was a hopeless failure, but as a music teacher. But his presence there was invaluable. Because to see someone unworldly and innocent and noble and great, I think that is by itself an education to students. And that is what Rukmini Devi wanted to create by inviting all these artists to come and stay there on campus. I mean, we were like one family. And he sang for Rukmini Devi's dance, when she began to do her Bharatanatyam performances. He was the first musician to sing for her. And this was so strange because he was such an old-fashioned traditionalist person. For him to accept a Brahmin woman learning Bharatanatyam and performing Bharatanatyam, remember this was in the 30s, early 30s. So that itself was a very difficult thing, I thought. I mean, one would think. But apparently, he thought it was a perfectly natural thing for Rukmini Devi to do. And he was happy to sing for her when many Vidwans refused to do so. And it seems, my teachers told me, that when he sat and sang, he didn't watch Rukmini Devi at all. He was just sitting there. The first 2 lines, he would watch her. And then he would close his eyes and go on singing as long as he wanted to sing. And Rukmini Devi was perfectly happy with that. She would go on dancing until he finished. And when he finished and started the next line, she would stop for one whole line, and then she would start the next line again. This is how they performed. And in those days, Bharatanatyam recitals were 3.5 hours long. I know, with an interval. So can you imagine what a feast of music and dance it must have been, Papanasham Shivan singing.
What do you have to say about his music?
About his music, what can I say? I can talk about the music that he wrote for Kalakshetra. So he also composed music for some of the Kalakshetra dance dramas, notably Andal, which I think is the greatest gem of the Kalakshetra dance dramas, even though everybody talks about the Ramayana. I think Andal is the most quintessential dance drama of Bharatanatyam because it's in Tamil, it is excellent, great Tamil, meant for dance, meant for singing. I mean, Ramayana, the shlokas are not meant for dance, but this is meant for singing Andal's Pasharams, Andal's songs. And he composed in the most Rakti ragas. And you will be surprised to know that he also composed some folk tunes in that with great, why should you be surprised? Because he composed some extraordinary folk tunes in his films. So, but this was not like film music at all. This was completely classical. And at the same time, there were a couple of folk motifs. He also composed music for Krishnamari Kuravanji, which I remember when it was first premiered in Kalakshetra. I was sitting on the floor in front, a little girl in Pavada Chatte. The great Tamil scholars were there. The theatre people were T.K. Shanmukam, T.K. Bhagavati, Mapo Shivagyana Gramaniyar, and people, scholars, Justice Maharajan, they were all Tamil scholars. They were sitting there. For every line, they were saying, aha, for every line, you know. And then they went and held his hands and said, how could you have created such extraordinary music for these words? The words are beautiful, the music is even more beautiful. And this is what Maposi told him. I was Mapo Shivagyana Gramaniyar, who was a great expert in Tamil. So he was appreciated not only by the common man, because his music could reach everybody. Yeah. But he was also deeply appreciated by a Tamil scholar. And Andal was, of course, always brings tears to the eyes of Tamil scholars because they see that a completely new dimension coming into it because of the music. That's all I think I remember about Papanasham Shivan.
I would now ask you to talk about Mysore Vasudevacharya because you have seen him.
Yes.
You have seen how he has composed, and he gave a lecture demonstration about the music compositions done by these composers in the Music Academy. And it was such a treat to understand how, particularly dance dramas, and particularly Rukmini Devi.
Yes,
actually, there is a context. There is a context for Rukmini Devi's creations because they are based on highly strictly Sanskrit Ramayana.
Yes, and they were not
how
really.
How he has done this? You were talking about some of the compositions in the academy. I want you to repeat.
Yes, I will do that. Vasudevacharya has composed music for the first 3 Ramayanas of Rukmini Devi. And when Rajaji, who is no great lover of music or dance, Rajagopalachari, when he came to see the third one, Paduka Pattabhishekam, he held Rukmini Devi's hand with one hand, Vasudevachar's hand with another hand, and said, both of you have built a temple to Rama which can never be destroyed. Because this temple is not outside, it will be in the hearts of every person who sees it. And I thought that was something extraordinary, and we were all privileged to hear him say that, holding the hand of the composer and the choreographer. But Vasudevachar, I don't know if he readily agreed to do this, because most of the Vidwans, they are a little apprehensive about, this was a new territory. There was no such thing called dance drama as Rukmini Devi visualized it until she produced it. So there was no model before to look at. There was Melatur Bhagavata Mela, there is also Kuravanji. But this dance drama was Rukmini Devi's own vision. It is an entirely own original creation of hers, which everybody now follows. So to create music for that, I think he must have had some apprehensions. But in any case, he had his grandson Rajaram, Raju as he was affectionately called by everybody, to help him. He was in his 90s, I think 92 or 93 at that time. So he was a very short man, extremely well dressed. He was always aware, he always looked as if he was going to meet the Maharaja in Mysore court. He never looked like, he was coming to Kalakshetra. And beautifully dressed, perfect panchakacham, and or a green shawl with a little zari in it, okay? So we used to call him Pachatata, or green grandfather. So Veena Sambasivaiyar, who was also part of Kalakshetra at the time, would wear a red towel on his shoulder, a cotton towel. And we would call him Shepatata, red grandfather. So that is how we distinguish them. Pachatata, sorry, I just got into the habit. Vasudevachar was, he had what you call a dharana, he was majestic. He was like a composer laureate, he was not very easily approachable in that sense, but he was loved children. And one of the things I remember, just before going to that, I want to say that before I forget, was that there was a Varalakshmi Puja in one of those years. And there are very few songs to Varalakshmi in the Carnatic canon. So my mother, who was a teacher there, she went and said, do you know any song about Varalakshmi so that I can teach the children? He said, I don't know any song, but I will compose it for you. He sat there and composed a beautiful song, Shri Hari Vallabhe. Abdini composed panni kudthar, and all the children sing it now. So he composed many of his songs on the campus, sitting under the tree, talking to students, or when somebody came and asked him. See, those times were so different. I feel that it's like a dream, Could I have actually lived through those times when great musicians just walked under the trees and caught hold of you by the ear and said, come learn a song? Not only to me, but to every student there, not mine. I was not the only person who was so privileged. And Vasudevachar, coming back to the Ramayana, the first song he composed, this I remember very clearly, even though I was very young. The first song he composed was Rukmini Devi wanted to start with Lava and Kusha narrating the story of the Ramayana before Rama in Rama's court. So there was the shloka begins Tapasvadhyaya Niratam. And so when he composed it in, I think, if I remember right, in Yadukula Kambodi, and came and sang it, Veena Sambasivaiyar was there, Budalur Krishnamurthy Shastrigal was there, T.K. Ramaswamy Iyengar, all the great musicians of Kalakshetra, they were all sitting there. It was the first song that was composed. So he sang it, and everybody was absolutely overawed, and they said, this is wonderful, and And Rukmini Devi just looked at Vasudevachar and said, this is absolutely wonderful, but totally useless for the dance production. You have to compose something different. And he just said, so what kind of song do you want? He said, they're two young children. They have to dance with verve. They have to dance in a lively way before their father. So this raga and this pace, it's too much for them. So said, all right, I'll come back tomorrow. The next day he came and composed something in Athana. So beautiful. Sambasivaiyar took out his tunde and put it down, and then he said, if I were a Maharaja, I would give you Akshara Laksham. I would give you a lakh of gold coins for each syllable. So that was, he just took it like that. And of course, she said it. She is very blunt also, by the way. Rukmini Devi is very blunt. She'll never beat around the bush. She didn't believe in that. She'll tell you straight, this is not suitable. That is one thing I remember. And then he was sometimes stuck he composed, as I said, for for the first three parts. Sometimes he would get stuck. In fact, he couldn't get the tune at all for Janaka giving Sita in marriage to Rama. Iyam Sita Mama Suta Sahadharma Charitava. This is a verse that is recited in North Indian weddings even today. Such a simple verse, Janaka taking the hand of Sita and giving it to Rama. But he couldn't get the idea at all. It seems, this is what my guru Rajaram sir, his grandson, told me. I believe in the night he suddenly got me, Raju, Raju, come here, come here. And he came there and he said, I think I've got it. I'm going to sing it now. Please notate it quickly before it goes away. And then he sang that song, sang it, and then he notated it. So that is one thing that, and then the best thing was the next day, I was walking down to my class, and Tata was sitting in the Tinnai, the payol, or just outside his house, okay. And then he said, hey Gauri, enga pare? Where are you going? I said, I'm going to class. Which class? Maths class. Maths class? Don't waste time. Come here, I'll teach you music. And then he made me sit there, and he taught me this song. Iyam Sita Mama Sutta Sahadharma Charitava. Yeah, this is what he taught me at that time, you know. So it is so amazing that a vidwan of his stature, and he did it for many students, by the way. I don't think that I was the only one who was privileged. So this is one thing. And the next, yeah, and then sometimes he didn't know which raga to use for certain scenes. And one of those scenes was Guhan taking Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana across the Ganges. And he couldn't get the right raga. He tried it in many different ways. And then finally he sang it. I'll just sing the first line for you. Jaladhara na 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 tena nirmala karini. Pogude. Enna raga ni yarkume theriyadu. Then he said, okay, I will call it Ganga Lahari. So a new raga was born. And another occasion was when Dasharatha is completely confused, you know. He's totally lost when Kaikeyi says that Rama has to go to the
With
forest.
one more example of Mysore Vasudevajra, we'll go to M.S. Subbalakrishnan.
I'll just give this one example. And he composed a song about Dasharatha and he called it Chitta Bhramari, confusion of the mind. So this was something so amazing. I want to say one more thing. The third one was, the third astonishing raga, which is not a creation of his, Chitta Bhramari was his creation, was when he sang, when he created the two Apsaras dancing on Chitrakuta. Rama, Lakshmana and Sita go to Chitrakuta and they look up at the mountain and they see two Apsaras behind the clouds dancing beautifully. And he composed, please go and see the Ramayana just to see this one song, and it is in a raga called Naga, not Nagaswaravali. Melekarta raga arkema. Naga Gandhari. That's one Megala. It just come back to me. It is so beautiful. Huh?
Nagaswaravali.
Illa. I know it. I don't know. It just escaped my mind. Keep singing.
Oh, guys said Naga.
Illa. Shaile pratyeshu ramyeshu pasheman kamadarshana. It'll come back to me. It's so beautiful when the Apsaras come with the beautiful scarf and dance and this music is played and you just feel that you are in heaven. You know, so many situations he created.
Naganandini, I think.
Naganandini, correct. Naganandini, correct. Naganandini. So it was so beautiful. And so I want to conclude because one can go on and on. I know so much.
But I have one
remember.
question on this.
Huh?
As a person who belongs to this particular generation where we get to record whatever we hear and, you know, we
Record,
put it into hard drive, you know, how do they manage to preserve it?
That is a huge story by itself, but in very few words,
Yeah.
due to lack of time, I would say that Sharda, there was a wonderful teacher there called Periya Sharda, the elder Sharda, and Kamala Rani, Pashupati, the musicians. They would go and sit with the vidwans who were composing the music, and as they composed, they would quickly notate.
Yeah.
Both of them would notate together and keep checking each
That
other's
shows
copies.
the
You know,
perfect
so the first
communication.
line one would notate, the second line the other one, because you cannot stop them and say sing it. If you stop and say sing it again, they can't,
Yeah.
because they're composing it on the spot. And the Ramayana, they were very lucky because they had Rajaram sir.
Yeah.
Because Rajaram sir would notate it and give it, but any other musician, including Papanasam Sivan, this was the method.
Oh.
The teachers would go and notate the songs and then come in.
And the most fascinating component of their personalities, both whether it is Papanasam Shivan or Mysore Vasudevacharya, Mysore Vasudevacharya may dress like as if he is going to Mysore court every day. But simplicity, accessibility, going to them is not difficult. They are not in ivory towers that people cannot go to them. They are accessible to students, they are ready to talk to students, they are ready to bring children to them and teach them. That is one of those very rare qualities that
Yeah.
is becoming rare now.
Yeah.
And then if we go to MS Subbulakshmi, for most of you it's surprising to, if I tell you that, she is the first woman to get Sangeet Kalanidhi Music Academy. Until then, no woman was given a Sangeet Kalanidhi. And probably, I think, the first Bharata Ratna in Carnatic music, maybe the last. Because, there are people immediately after MS Subbulakshmi got Bharata Ratna, there were several senior musicians who were thinking that they will also get next year. But it never happened. So keeping that in mind, and her personality where, she has earned crores of rupees, but 2.5 crores or something like that. At the end of the day, he was left with no money. He has not used any money except 7 saris and the diamond studs you find. He has not used any money for herself. That is both Sadashivam, and in fact Sadashivam sold the entire Kalki Gardens to pay the striking employees of Kalki at the time. And they had to move to a house, rented house near Valluvar Kottam those days. So she has gone through a lot of difficulties in life. And it was Mahaperiyawal, Shankaracharya, the Kanchi Shankaracharya. He was initially hesitant to accept a woman from Devadasi community. But later on he realized when she heard her sing that there is some divine component in her. And you find, there are many incidents in her life which made her what she has been and what she is and what she will be for generations to come. And what are those things that made MS Subbulakshmi great? What do you think about it, Gayatri?
Gayatri.
We will-
No, I've talked a lot.
I'll give her breathing time.
I would like to give my pranams to all of you here, Papuji, Gauri Akka, Sukanya ji, Venkatachala all of you elders, I take your blessings. This is a great honor and a blessing for me to even be sitting here and talking about MS Amma, whom we all hold so dear to our hearts. I would like to rather talk about MS Amma and her music from the angle of a student of music and a fledgling performer. There are several articles and, people keep talking about the fact that she hasn't created a lineage of students, except for close family members. Gauri Akka has been very, very fortunate to learn from her. But I beg to differ about this because I think every student of music has in her mind at some point of time MS Amma as her guru. She is a guru for so many things, so many different aspects of music that you will have to internalize if you want to perform with bhakti and bhava and with an adherence to tradition. She has been a Loka Guru, that is what I would like to say. First of all, if we talk about her greatness, why we still, all of us talk about MS Subbulakshmi. In fact, it's a personal experience. When we went to Badri last year, Badrinath, We enter the temple, the Badri Dham, at around 3 a.m. in the morning, and we hear her Suprabhatam. Then you go to Tirupati, and you hear her Suprabhatam, and you hear her Vishnu Sahasranama, and you hear her Annamaya. Down here in Rameshwaram, there you hear her Rameshwara Suprabhatam. I don't think, any other musician is heard among the gods like this. That itself, it shows that she was not, to me, personally, I feel she's not just a human, she's an avatara. That is how I would take her to be. Because she was born to show us certain things in life, to live life humbly in spite of being so well accomplished, and being the extremely divine person that she was, the humane qualities that she showed, and how that reflected in her music, and how she worked her sadhana and her hard work that brought about that wonderful music that stands the test of time. It's going to be there for centuries. I am
What aspects of her music do you think?
For me, the first striking aspect, there are various aspects that I would like to talk about. The first striking aspect is her perfect Shruti sense. We hear that Bhade Ghulam Ali Khanji called her Suswara Subhalakshmi. And that was not for nothing, because any swara she touched, she was able to hit the pure note. That was the greatest quality about her. And for that, I am very sure, I've read from Aka's books, how she used to play with the tambura. She used to string the tambura, run away, sing for some time, come back and string the tambura to see if she was still in pitch, even in spite of being away from the tambura. That is the kind of Shruti sense which she inculcated. It's one thing, she was God's child. God blessed her with so many things when she was born, including that beautiful magical voice that she had. But how she developed it and how she used it finally to create that magical effect which none of us can forget even today. Or, as I said, I'm very, very sure our great grandchildren are going to be talking about MSMR. That I don't think any other musician will, have that kind of impact on people. Very few musicians will have that kind of impact on people. So I feel that it's the Shruti sense first. I have a few clippings that I would like to share with all of you, and there is this beautiful video of her Tyagaraja Aradhana concert that you can all look up. Narayanji, if we can play the Raga Alapana from Pakkana Nilapati.
The screen is coming down.
Yeah. So what I would like you all to observe when you see this is, one thing is the classism she maintains in the raga throughout. First the Shruti sense, and then her Suswara, and how she gives those long karvais, the long passages, staying on one note, and how she hits the sajam each time, how she, it's like almost like a bee hovering over a flower, that the way she does that. And then all the jarus and the beautiful brihas, small clipping, but it'll give you an insight. And I also, I love this video for the reason that she's so beautiful in this. So she is always beautiful, but this, her skin, it's just glittering, and I feel she's a devata when I see this. If we can hear.